On New Year's Eve, Xi Jinping delivered a New Year's message, just like he did in past years. How is this year's message different from the previous years? What messages did the Chinese Communist Party deliver to announce China's future direction? And what does it mean to all of us? Hello everyone, welcome to my show. I'm Lei. I compared Xi Jinping's speech last week to the New Year greeting in the past 4 years. She mentioned Taiwan reunification for the first time this year. He said,
只有和衷共济，共同努力，一国两制才能行稳致远，实现祖国完全统一，是两岸同胞的共同心愿。
Although he only used one sentence, the fact that this is the first time he mentions the Taiwan unification in 5 years means that Taiwan is top on the agenda now. She mentioned self-revolution and a conversation Mao Zedong had in 1945 that's called the Cave Conversation.
我曾谈到当年毛主席与黄炎培先生的窑洞对。 我们只有勇于自我革命，才能赢得历史主动。
In 1945, at the end of World War II, when Japan's surrender was imminent, Huang Yanpei, a renowned educator, asked Mao in his cave dwelling how one could break out of the cyclical law of the dynastic changes, to which Mao answered, "We have found a new way which can allow us to break out of the cyclical law. This new way is democracy." Generally, the New Year's greeting is just a cookie-cutter speech for PR purposes, and she can't say too much. But this year was so different that it seems that Xi Jinping had a lot more to say. So, in an unprecedented move, on New Year's Day, CCP's official magazine, 求实, or Seeking Truth, published Xi's full speech during the 6th plenary session of CCP's 19th committee last November. The speech sheds light on what he means by self-revolution and why he mentioned Mao's discussion on democracy. Xi's self-revolution refers to the party's need for self-purification and improvement, aka the anti-corruption movement, except this year his tone became much more domineering. He said, "We should promote the party's self-revolution with the courage to face up to problems and to turn the blade inward, no matter what the problem is or who is in trouble. When the hand needs to strike, it will strike, especially for those who seize the interests of the state and the people, eroding the party's ruling base, shaking the socialist state power. For those who engage in political factions, circles, or interest groups within the party, we won't be lenient and we'll deal with them." Ouch! This is forewarning for those who oppose Xi. It seems that the CCP's internal infighting and political cleansing are getting out of control and more heads will be rolling in 2022. The reason why Xi mentioned Mao Zedong's 1945 talk, I believe, is the similar context in which Mao gave his talk to the situation Xi is in now. Mao successfully seized power at the end of World War II, when the world geopolitical landscape was being reshaped. And Xi Jinping is now trying to do the same amid the fast-changing global geopolitical landscape after the pandemic. Mao talked about democracy then, and Xi Jinping discussed China's full-process democracy now. Xi's speech sent another very clear message. He is moving away from the economic reform and opening up policies established by Deng Xiaoping. He wants to replace Deng's political legacy of building the economy with Mao's platform of building the party. In the long speech he gave on November 11th, he didn't mention economic reform at all, and mentioned Deng Xiaoping only once. The quote she borrowed from Deng is a telling one. "As long as socialism doesn't fall in China, socialism will always stand in the world." You see, Xi Jinping has decided that he must first return to an ideological rejuvenation before he can rejuvenize the country. To show his determination, he mentioned Mao Zedong's decision back then to support the war in North Korea to fight the United States at any cost. even if the country is broken and needs to be rebuilt. That's a quote from Mao that she used. She further highlighted the Korean War in his speech. He said, "Back then, in the face of armed threats and provocations from imperialist America that had the world's strongest economy and most powerful military force, the party's Central Committee and Comrade Mao Zedong made the historic decision to fight the United States and defend the country with the strategic foresight of 1 fist opens the door to avoid 100 fists." What does the metaphor 1 fist opens the door to avoid 100 fists mean? It refers to Mao's intimidation strategy used during the Korean War. It's the idea of stopping a war with a war. The weaker side uses a strong counterattack to generate fear in the stronger opponent, who will then be intimidated and ask for peace. She then uttered 6 struggle commands in one breath. Develop the spirit of struggle, grasp the direction of struggle, gain the upper hand in the struggle, assert the willpower to struggle, master the rules of struggle, and strengthen the skills of struggle. Although the CCP has always perceived the United States as an opponent, for most of the past 40 years, it tried to remain friendly on the surface while quietly taking advantage of the United States to grow economically. For the CCP's official magazine to release such a strong statement on New Year's Day, it was obviously meant to set the stage for Xi Jinping to roll up his sleeves and take actions. But what does this mean for all of us? Does it mean China will start a war with the US or Taiwan? Not necessarily. I think his speech is a perfect example of the intimidation strategy in his Mao quote. By delivering such a strong message, he is warning his political enemies within the party, as well as those who oppose him outside of China. But he's not going to start a war right away, as it's too risky for him right now. But I do think life will be more difficult for those living inside China, as the country will become more closed, policies become more severe, and living conditions more harsh. For foreign nationals, it will be more difficult to do business in China, as the regime doesn't care about economic growth as much as before. But I think political infighting within the CCP will be even more intensified. In my next video, I will talk about why Xi Jinping doesn't agree with Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms. I'm not doing it to justify Xi's ideas, but I think it's important to understand why he thinks the way he does. It's particularly important for anyone who's going to deal with China to understand how CCP leaders think. The other very important topic is Xi's relations with the Chinese military, the PLA. That's also very relevant in the ever-complex global geopolitical landscape, and I'll be making videos on that topic as well. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Stay warm and safe. See you next time.